Ready to get into this real talk segment. Yes, indeed. We got these husbands here. Of course, we got Stu Baby. We got the coach, Coach Will. We got our guest husband, who happens to be my dad, Stacey Jordan Sr. And then we got me, your host, Stacey Jordan. We are here. We are here with an individual I'm proud to be sitting next to, Mr. Tony Lewis, who's the author of Slug, A Boy's Life in the Age of Mass Incarceration. Give it up for him. You on with the husband.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, man.
Building.
Appreciate y'all, man. Listen, man, I know you've been listening to our conversation. Yeah. You know, I've read a part of your book, and I've been following you somewhat. And what I'm impressed with is how well you articulate what's going on that a lot of us don't know. Because you and I were talking, right? And we were talking about how, you know, a lot goes on in the neighborhoods. And what you have is some guys who leave the neighborhood, never look back, right? Mm. And there are those of us who are outside of it, and we're not conscious of what's going on. And I really appreciate the way that you have, you know, traveled around and sort of, you know, brought our eyes back to, you know, back into focus about, you know, it's not just about us. Like, we really need to do something, you know, to make our communities better. But I don't want to keep on talking. I want to hear from you, man. People who haven't read your book, who might not know who you are, you know, 10 people left who don't know who you are. You know, tell them, man. Tell them a little bit about your story and your cause.
Well, a quick synopsis, man, is so I've been, for the last 18 years of my life, I've been working in direct service of men, women, and children impacted by mass incarceration, doing violence reduction, helping people connect the dots, cognitive behavior interventions, all the whole nine. My father went to prison when I was 9, so very similar to what your father said. But my father got life without parole. So the last 30 years, my father has been incarcerated. That reality, and you know, this was 1989 when this happened in Washington, D.C. D.C. would soon, after that, morph into the murder capital of the United States. I grew up in that time. I grew up on Hanover Place in Northwest Washington, the epicenter of cocaine trade in D.C. And that adjustment, you know, in terms of our lifestyle change, right? My father was a millionaire, and we went to prison. You know, things went away, and my mother couldn't handle that. Like he spoke about your grandmother not working and had to get a job. Same thing happened with my mom, but she couldn't really find her rhythm. And it robbed her of her sanity. So my father going to prison subsequently really robbed me of both of my parents. I had very involved, loving parents, only child up until 9 years old, and then, you know, soon after that, that went away. And then growing up, the backdrop of that, though, is growing up in on Hanover Place in a community filled with drugs and violence, right? Through my formative years. But at the same time, and I come from, my mother's side of the family is a family very with a long-standing relationship to the underworld. So I had uncles that were very involved in the street, you know, gambling, bank robbery, and things like that. But those men also taught me a lot of good values, right? And I knew I was loved, and that was something that sustained, right, me in terms of my foundation was really, really strong. And I could go on, I mean, but you know, like, long story short,
man, tell it, make it the story, you know, man. Let people
just growing up, how we grew up, you know, in our generation, you know, the crack epidemic took the adults away from us, right? Wow. So very soon on, you know, as young men, and I'm talking about young, like 12, 13, 14 years old, me and my friends were left to sort of make decisions for ourselves, you know what I mean, in a lot of ways. And a lot of my friends got involved in the game. A lot of my friends went to jail for homicide when we were teenagers. A lot of my friends were victims of homicides when we were teenagers. And so me being able to navigate through that, and, you know, I went to Gonzaga College High School, and, you know, and then I bumped in a family friend when I got out of high school, and I was, he got me into this kind of youth ambassador peer-to-peer program. He asked me, you know, my grandmother asked him to get me a job, you know what I'm saying? And I always remember that because I did that for her, you know what I mean? But it's kind of the best decision that I ever made, because I fell in love with doing outreach, and I could do it better than the people around me in a way, you know, just based on the connectivity and the understanding that the people that I was outreaching to, I was them, right? So I could get places that other people couldn't. And then I wrote in UDC, and then and it kind of, you know, and then at the same time, you know, people around me still dying and going to prison. I almost got caught up in an FBI indictment, and that, like, that kind of like made me decide that, you know, I really had to walk this path. And then God just blessed me, man. I just, you know, continued to grow, and then I started working in a reentry program, and that became an even better fit. And then, like, you know, when I was doing that, BT did this series called American Gangster. My father and a guy named Rayful Edmond were partners. That's who he went to prison with. And so he did a feature on him, and I was a part of that. And then after that,
which I saw, by the way.
Yeah, and our big homie, Cornell Jones, they did one on him the next year, and I was on that one as well. So then my profile kind of, you know, raised a bit from the two national looks, and I was like the good part of it, right? I was like the good that came out of this,
right? Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? Is you ain't gonna find too many people on two episodes of a show called American Gangster for not being a gangster, you know what I mean?
Right, yeah.
And so, and from there, man, I just, you know, things just grew, and I started to do more. I was always doing stuff in the community, but now I was really moving in a way in which I was making community activism and philanthropy kind of thing. I was incorporating, connecting kind of the indigenous DC to, you know, this new DC, as a new DC was emerging, right?
Right.
And like 08, 09, this new DC was emerging, the kind of rap scene, and, you know, a lot of people moving here, gentrification was starting to happen,
Right.
and I was sort of the bridge trying to connecting those people to bring them to help with the issues that persist with the DC native. And so that thing has persisted over the last decade, advocating for children with incarcerated parents. And I wrote Slug, and well, I started writing in 2012, published it in 2015. You know, won the Steve Harvey Best Community Leader Award in 2011. You know, it's just been things, different things, CNN features, Washington Post stuff. You know what I'm saying? So, but because I do this work every day, this is not a fad for me.
Right. This is your.
So before the term mass incarceration became a thing, right, I was already doing the work, and so I look at myself and Slug as being the most comprehensive look at mass incarceration and what it can do to a boy, to a family, to a neighborhood, to a city, to a country. Yeah, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So
I wanna kind of talk about something, because I saw part of this in your book, and I think you were talking about an aunt or somebody who you got to see work every day.
Yeah, my Aunt Bonnie.
Yeah. And then you talk about your grandmother, and you talk about your uncles, and, you know, and this is kind of links to when I was listening to my dad talk earlier, and how just because we've lost a lot of people, you know, but people like you and people like your aunt and your grandmother who step up and step in, like, we still can get it done, you know, the strength of other people stepping in and being willing to do it. Because, I mean, look at you, man. You know what
undoubtedly, like, those things are important, right?
Yeah.
But what I, you know, and I think even in the people that don't quote unquote make it, right, people step up for them as well. Right. But when we, you know, you spoke about men, right, and it's this particularly in poor communities, and, you know, and we seen poor white folk and poor Latinos go to prison too, but there's been the greatest destabilizer for black people.
Absolutely.
The greatest.
Without question.
So even when people step up and do what they can, because right there they have other pressures on them.
Right.
You understand? And I think what we've really seen this, and I talked about my mother losing her sanity, right? We've seen the black woman be marginalized based on this mass exodus, right? Yeah. And so my grandmother and my aunt, you know what I mean, they stepped up for my cousins too. My little cousin got killed. Some of my cousins went to jail. Like, I got lucky. You know what I'm saying? In a lot of ways. I mean, I don't like to use the term luck, but my point is that, you know, I'm very grateful and very conscious of, like, the things that happen with me, and I also see, I think it's just certain things that I had in me, man, that I don't even know. Kind of wrote the book trying to figure that shit out. Sorry, trying to figure that out. You know what I mean? Trying to figure it out, because it was just like, you know, and I just think from a boy, you know what I mean, I always kind of had leadership qualities. Always kind of, you know, it was things about me that, you know, I'm kind of the same person I always been, right? Yeah. And I say all that to say that what we grew up in, it wasn't, and a lot of people across this country grow up in, is much deeper than just having people to step up, right? The community is so fragile and so dangerous, you know what I mean? For me never to go to prison, you know what I'm saying, is like really the most, impossible thing. You know what I mean? Like where I come from, at every turn, it wasn't like everything about the way we live was something that was en route to jail.
Yeah.
Everything, like literally every single thing, and so. Unless you stayed in the house and got depressed or something, like so just going to the store for your mother or your grandmother sending you to the store to go get that whatever it was they were sending you to the store for, you had to navigate through so much, you know what I mean? And so my friends that's in jail for murder that's been there since we was 16, 17, 18 was pure souls, bro. You know what I'm saying? Like them dudes weren't tough when we was growing up.
Yeah.
Our environment, you know what I mean? And but that lack of protection. And that's the thing about our role as men. When you got neighborhoods and communities where men aren't there.
Yeah, talk about it.
Right,
man.
to protect and provide, you know what I mean, and support.
Yeah.
You have to do that. You talked about that, like even with, I want money going on a field trip.
Right,
or
man.
your little mind.
Yeah.
And I had that
like
same mind. Like I gotta do something.
Yeah.
Or I'm tired of I gotta keep waiting or asking. And then like in my generation, so this is the thing. Your pop's generation, that happened to them, right? So this I'm saying, this ain't new, but you're talking about this generational trauma, this trauma that's passed down, right? Wow. So if that happened to his generation, right? By the time it get to us, it's even worse.
It's amplified,
right?
That's
and
right.
then a lot of people our age had babies at 14 and 15. I work with that. My friends' sons are guys that I work with now, just coming home from prison. I got friends who were cellies with their fathers. You know what I'm saying?
Wow.
And they cellies with their sons.
So, like, say that again, like, because that's like you've seen it, but a lot of people ain't. That doesn't register to people,
right? And so, like when we talk about this, see mass incarceration is a macro and a micro thing, right? So it's really where you see generations. Of people, grandfather, father, and grandson on the same compound. Yeah. That's a real thing. That's not like, you're trying to sound like it. No, that happens, right?
Yeah.
But you've also seen simultaneously grandfather, father, and grandson victims of gun violence in these same communities.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you dealing with that, you talked about a criminal justice system or correction system that's not about rehabilitation, that's not about making people better than when they walk in them doors, and those people are returning to communities that's not welcoming or not being able, you're dealing with policy issues where they can't get jobs or live where they want to go.
Right.
And so you kind of see how this cycle starts to continue. You see school systems that don't mind for children with incarcerated parents, don't support them.
Yeah.
And when we know those children deal with more than any other group in terms of trauma, these adverse childhood experiences, which having an incarcerated parent is one of them, but those children that have an incarcerated parent are much more likely to experience things like a mentally ill parent, a drug addicted parent, growing up in a poor community, abusive household, of witnesses or victims of violence. Like that's data. That's not Tony Lewis's opinion.
Right.
So these are the things, and I'm not saying that it's all like it's impossible, because it's not, right? I'm here.
Right, you here.
But we have to acknowledge, in my mind, that what Slug was about to really talk about, how far-reaching this phenomenon has been, in our country, and then particularly in the African American community, and the fastest growing population in prison a lot of times right now is women.
Right. I've heard that.
But
man.
how? But why? Right?
Yeah, right.
Okay. If I'm a single mother, you know what I mean, and my father probably went to jail, or I probably, you know what I'm saying. So like I'm growing up in the same community. We tend to look at men and women differently, but they under the same pressures, even more sometimes. So I gotta do what I gotta do to feed these babies. I gotta do what I gotta do. Or I mess with this dude and he in the game, and I get locked up. Rather I'm moving drugs, holding drugs in my house, and I don't want to tell them, or whatever it is.
Right, man.
Or using drugs to escape the horrors of my life and the abuse that I've been through, and then I start stealing or doing what I got to do to feed my habit. Like, so all this stuff kind of, happens. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
you had a question?
I had a comment, and so Slug, the book, was written, I think, for a certain audience, right? And people would think, it's for the inner city kid, or the kid that don't have his father there or something, right? I think the book will do the best work to those suburban moms or those suburban families, right? Because those are the people that's gonna go who still got their voting rights, still got all their rights, right? And they're gonna go up there and they're gonna see on the little checkbox, minimum sentences or mass incarceration. Oh, I like that. Let me check the box as I'm voting.
Right.
But this is a real story right here. This is somebody who coming to you and saying, this is the result of the vote that you just put in.
Yeah.
Let me tell you how bad it affected me and the people around me and what I'm doing right now as a father with my kids.
Yeah. I really appreciate that, bro, because I literally wrote Slug to that's what I meant. I wrote it to the country. I wrote it to the soccer mom in Maine. I wrote it to the lawmaker. I wrote it to the judge. We talk about mandatory minimums and all these things that, these tough on crime, the war on drugs, to really show how you dismantle communities. And really you made the problem worse, right? So, like, if you take, and this is not in defense of any choices my father made or anybody that he was affiliated, right? But what I'm saying is, and like my dad went to jail, he was 26 years old. His birthday today, actually. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, right. I saw
He turned
that.
56 today. You know, he been in jail 30. You know what I'm saying? But my point is that you take 26-year-old man away forever, right? And so nonviolent crime too, right? These mandatory minimum, because like you said, these judges, once you get to that point, the judge is like, I have to give them that sentence. I don't have any.
On the book.
That's right. Well, that was his first strike, but I'm just saying, strike was a part of that became a part of it too. Yeah, it didn't have to be 3 strikes to get life. My father never had no convictions. You know what I'm saying? So
nothing, no priors.
Went to jail one time, never came back home.
Forever. That's crazy.
But what I'm saying is, you have situations in this country where you had this you took all the discretion away from the judge, and so when the average citizen. You know, you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Like we got like 40 more murders in D.C. today than we had at this time last year.
That's right. They said the rate is
up.
up.
So violence is up, right?
Yeah.
But the interesting part about that is you hear people, we gotta. Everybody's minds go back to this. We gotta lock them up, and we gotta. We too soft. It's no such thing. Tough on crime don't work. What you did was you took the people. You created these vacuums. You took the quote unquote power structure out, and things got worse. My father went to jail in '89. Though murders was going up, but in the 90s, we went way up.
Right.
How do you explain that? I thought they would have caused all the violence. You see what I'm saying? So you destabilize like right now. But a lot of the younger guys, they're not even being trained up, even in a street sense, to even learn respect, to learn hierarchy, because there's nobody there.
Right, who's showing them.
Wow.
And so therefore it becomes difficult to step in. Who gonna step in?
You know what? You saying that I was at a forum, a bunch of guys. It was called Marvel. I forget the name of it, but over the weekend, and that was one of the conversations. It's a young guy talking and an older guy talking. Both of them saying they ain't gonna listen to me. Yeah. Right? That was a part of the conversation, and we're going back and forth saying, "Well, you got to talk to them because you look like them." Man saying, "Well, you got to talk to them because you know more." But and trying to find solutions. It wasn't a dead end. But my point is, this is the real conversation. How and who is going to step in?
And I think I'm a big. You know how you do when they come up with a vaccine, right? A lot of vaccinations is about putting the disease or modifying the disease, right? Right.
Right.
So the answer and the problem, they can do it. You know what I mean? Like I said, what made me a great outreach worker, right? When I first started out, is that I was them. I was the problem.
That's
you know what I'm saying? So like, we got to do is grab them young guys, the dudes with connectivity, grab them, train them up, help them to see that there's a better way. And it's happening, right? We just got to but it takes funding to do that. It takes resources. It takes resources to do that, right? And it takes will. You understand? It takes political will to say we have to fix this problem. One of the things like in the district right now is that you have all this progression. Right? We already got all of us, right? We all got a nickel in this quarter, in my opinion. Like, we all got to think, like, wow, people from all the D.C. most moved to place in America the last 4 years. Everybody's coming here to chase their dreams, but the people born here living in a nightmare. We got to figure that out.
Yeah, we got to figure that out.
Figure that out.
No, you're right.
You know what I mean? We got to figure that out. And a lot of people a lot of our family members who, in the 80s and 90s got jobs and were able, in the late 70s, were able to move out to PG County. You know what I mean? And not that none of this stuff is happening in PG County, because it is. Right. But we also got to find a way to kind of get back to our roots in a way.
You and I talked about that on the phone, which was that, look, my father got out of that. That was his goal. Get out of that.
Mine too. We moved to Maryland too.
Far and fast, get out of there, right? So look,
Real talk.
real talk, right?
Yeah.
And so now he put resources behind me to go to college, and I'm like, all right, far and fast, I'm looking outside the beltway. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The thing is, I think, maybe we're so motivated to leave some of those experiences behind that we leave people behind too.
Yeah.
And me thinking about your book, exactly what he said. Like when I start looking at it, I start looking at myself because because now I'm saying, man, now I'm a speaker. I do outreach. I get out there, but it's like, okay, but still in my decision making, am I still in the mindset where I'm leaving somebody else behind? You know what I'm saying?
Well, I think this is my thing, man. I think it's the expectation for you to be pulling up on First and O or pulling up on Willow Road, jumping out on the corner. Nah. And your father said something earlier. I don't know if we was on or not, but about you just got to find your part though. Even if it's like, okay, what organization in them communities doing a lot of work? Can I get them $20 a week?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, cause everything ain't for us to do. Even now, as a activist or leader or whatever, and I've been, doing this stuff 18 years, and I do this annual like turkey drive as an example. And I was just saying yesterday too, I was like, nah, that's what I've been pouring in everybody else for. This year I'ma chill. I'm just gonna support. Somebody else gonna do it. You know what I mean? Cause that ain't for me to do no more.
Right.
My role is to impact this policy and get more. Have these national conversations and do. My role is changing. My role is growing, and I've been trying to point the people behind me to do what I used to do.
Yeah.
And so I ain't in. I'm even in this conversation around the violence. I've been working, in the front line and working behind the scenes and trying to get policy crafted and that funding I spoke about in the right places. I'm not doing the violence interruption anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, I got a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old and a wife. I'm going home. I'm not getting out my bed at 2 in the morning no more. I did that already. Right. That's not for me to do. But I have a role to play.
Yeah. Right.
And I think we all got to figure out our role, our passion. It ain't got to be violence. It could be teaching youngins how to do things. But you have to do. I feel like we just have to do something.
Something, yeah.
That's it.
Yeah,
what something. That is, you have to kind of figure that out for yourself.
Yeah, but in a way, it's sort of putting the structure back in place.
Yeah.
The thing that's been dismantled,
Absolutely.
We can work together, to make that happen again, where we creating pathways, not necessarily out, but definitely up.
Sure.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's just about exposure, man.
Yeah.
These young people, they brilliant, right? They don't need as much as we think. They just need to know there's something real. They need people to not make promises that they won't keep.
Yeah.
I ain't even gonna say can't keep, but that they won't keep, you know?
Yeah.
And that's it, because they got it, bro. They got it. They just really just need to say, oh, that's how you do that.
Right, yeah.
And watch out. I seen I wouldn't have continued to do this long if it, like I'm talking about men and women coming home from jail. Like we had a lot of success with getting people they do it, but giving them a boost and they fly.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Did you have a question that you want to ask?
Well, my comment more so than a question was that it takes a village, and people have to really have a heart to get involved to see change. Because if everybody stands on the outskirts and waits for somebody else to do something, then nothing will happen. All you have to do, we as a people have to begin to unite and do what we can do. What's in your hand?
Yeah.
What can you do? How can you impart? Even if it's in the small area where you are, in that small parameter where you're working, it's a phrase that goes inch by inch, anything's a cinch. And you don't have to be a Martin Luther King. You just be you.
Wow.
And impart where you can impart.
That's where it started at,
and what happens is there's going to be a crack. And in that crack, there's going to be an opening. And before you know it, you're going to be in the flow of that opening. And it just takes you taking those steps. But if you never take a step, if you keep sitting back on the bench, watching, sidelining, talking about it, and not doing anything, then nothing will happen.
We done fell in love with with this social media activism, right?
Yeah.
We think we
Oh,
gonna
no.
post our way to something.
Right.
We scared our own people. We gotta go. See, and
I'm
everybody woke.
Everybody
You know what I'm saying? Where like I mean, in the real work, you gotta go touch people.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's why even in a lot of people, and I don't have no issue with anybody, but what I am saying is a lot of people we look to for leadership. You know what I'm saying? All that. Like I just want to go to where you do that at.
Right.
Who you accountable to
Yeah.
before
Wow.
you know what I mean? For real, like take me where you make your bones at, where you cut your teeth at.
Right.
Yeah.
Who you ever stopped from getting killed? Who you ever got a job? Who you been to see in prison? How you talking about mass incarceration? You ain't done none of the above.
Yeah.
And you ain't been locked up. Like what? Who are you? Where you did that at?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's the part that bothers me because it's like the message gets diluted and it's becoming more about what I can, what TV show I can get on, or my how many followers I got, but you ain't doing nothing honestly.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so like that, I think that's the difference when we talk about, say, a Dr. King or Malcolm or people in that civil rights era. They touched people. They had people that they had to look in their eyes that guided them.
Right.
I live in the same house I grew up in. Definitely, and let me say this preference: I'm never in no way that'll be a complete blasphemy to ever. I'm not speaking my situation in the same realm with them. What I am saying though is like them. People know who I am, where I'm at. I can't just do anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what
right.
I'm saying?
Yeah.
I can't just say anything.
Right.
Or,
Yeah.
And so for a lot of folks, man, that speak for us, in this country, it's like, where you do that at? Where have you, where your people? Because and we got punch drunk as it relates to fame and that's trickled down to activism.
Right.
I think that's even trickled down to clergy.
Uh-oh.
It's fame. We driven by the wrong things.
Wow.
We really are. And I think we gotta get back, centered in terms of why we here and what's the main purpose. You know what I'm saying? So
I want to go back. Since we got a couple minutes, and I was thinking about this while you were saying it. You were talking about how when you left your house, there's a bunch of pathways that lead to prison, and it's almost a miracle that you didn't, right? And then when people come home from prison, there's no support system. It's not very welcoming. Do you think that's by design?
Yeah, I think it's obvious. It's all by design.
And
bro.
I figure what your answer
So,
would be,
yes.
but I want you to...
It's by design. I mean, when you talk about systematic racism, when you talk about the policies and the laws in place, when you talk about how our communities are hyper policed, all of that stuff is literally by design. And the focus and the target is the black male. Does that mean though that we can't navigate through that stuff? But I think we would be, the older I get, the more I see it.
Right,
You know what I mean?
right,
Just
right.
how much
wow.
it is
Right,
by
right.
design. The more
Yeah.
things I see and experience, it's like, oh wow.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Especially since a lot of times they're making money off of prisoners.
Yeah.
Privatized.
Yeah, but I mean,
Not
let
only
me say this
the
though.
working piece. Go ahead.
I can't say this right, and I do want to say that with I know that it's private prisons, right? There are prisons have been privatized, but
Right, we got 'em
but it's
right in
about
DC.
10, right? But it's about 10% of prisons are privatized. But crime is like a commodity; it creates an economy. I have a job. My job that I do is based on people coming home from prison. You know what I'm saying? So like,
industrial complex
yeah,
gives you
exactly.
a job.
Well,
Yeah.
well, the reason why that's significant
I
is
already
because
know.
based upon a test in the 4th grade, they decide to,
Sure, prisons
to build prisons.
Sure.
But
Sure.
we talked about the system, right, and how they go after our people. But how much focus are you targeting the individual, their responsibility, their accountability?
More than that, more than I focus on the system.
Okay, because a lot of times, we need to see what to do, how to do it, and how to navigate. And so we can always say it's the white man, and that part is true,
Yeah.
right? But what tools, what skills, what are the things that I can tell Shorty, like, hey, you need to X, Y, and Z when you conduct yourself around a woman, conduct yourself around a police officer, those type of things.
Well, I'm gonna say definitely about the. I don't know about the police officer piece, but I think I think Slug was about that too. It's instructional, right?
Okay.
This is what I did when I came. This is how you have to show resolve. You gonna have to show, diligence. You gonna have to swallow your pride. You gonna have to be patient. You gonna have to dream. You gonna have to have some spiritual basis. All those things. You know what I mean? That's just in terms of telling a young man. But I believe more in showing them. And then, but like I get what you're saying about like the police situation, but I tread lightly on that and telling him what to say with the police, as if you say everything right, that means you gonna make it home. Like anything,
Right.
That's like blaming the victim. Like, say if we say, he
right,
must have said something wrong, that's not necessarily the truth.
Right.
So I don't subscribe to that
that's
piece.
true.
But
No, we've had that. And
Getting
we've
your
had
point,
that.
though.
We've
You know what I'm
had
saying?
that
I'm getting your
experience
point.
with y'all.
I've had it,
These guys were in the car and he got his hands up, like, and the officer
that's
like,
like-
"Why you got your hands
Yeah,
up?"
right.
Like,
Yeah.
yo,
Damn. I mean, what do I do?
Yeah,
You know?
right.
So, but I I'm just saying, I think I'm very big on what I do. You know what I'm saying? Every day, basically, is when I talk about the cognitive behavior interventions and stuff like that, is really training individuals on how to, be successful, particularly men and women come home from prison. And it's about that, your accountability. You know what I mean? The decisions that you make and who you're around and all those things, because, we have to talk about that.
have to.
But the question becomes, right? And we would like to think that if you do all of those things, you're gonna be okay. But like I said, it's sometimes I feel like in this country, man, you gotta be perfect, right? We do.
Yeah.
No,
Everybody
you're
else
right.
can make a
No,
ton
no,
of
no.
mistakes.
No,
you know what I'm
that's
saying?
that's
So
You
it's
real.
can't.
like,
You
they can be human rather than, I ain't gonna say make mistakes. They can just be like human.
Right.
We can't.
No, really,
You know what I mean?
really.
So,
Yeah, I got a question, Tony, for you, and it's on the personal level, bro. Because your father went away. You ain't had your father at 9 years old, right?
yeah.
What is it that you do on a daily basis with your kids? You got 2 kids. You're a father. How did that? You not having your father. What does it do for you on a daily basis? What do you do with your kids that is a direct reflection of you not having your father in your life?
Maximize time, bro.
Wow.
I don't waste a second with them. You know what I'm
You don't
saying?
waste a
I
second.
don't waste a second. I don't know what's gonna happen. You know what I mean? I just
Oh, you know
bro.
what? He's saying that, one thing, recently in our family, we had a loss. And, my thinking is, if that happened, if I was gone today, like, every moment's got to be impactful, you got to leave them with something. Like if I'm gone today, I have to leave enough of an impact and an impression that they can navigate, enough where they can make
Hey,
it,
bro,
and
if
not
my
be lost.
dad wasn't the dad that he was before he went to prison, we wouldn't have no relationship. We probably as tight as a person can be after 30 years of incarceration, and that's based on that first 9, though.
Wow.
That
Whoa.
first 9 meant something.
Bro.
That's amazing.
He was
man.
A big drug dealer, bro. But he spent he was a dad. He was a hell of a dad, and that's that kept us being able to connect. And then the crazy thing y'all, I'm still now, and I got to deal with. Taking my babies to prison. That's a big struggle for me.
Yeah.
And my 5-year-old, I was playing this song. I'm on the song with this artist named Chaz French, and I'm talking about my life on the record. And it just was on my random iPod thing. iPhone, it was, it was on the shuffle, man. And she heard me talking about my dad getting arrested. She said, Papa got arrested. And I didn't know she knew what arrested meant, bro. And I had to explain her that. I vowed her that I would never lie to her about, you know. Cause we go to see him, but I was like, she ever asked this jail and be like, but she like, so that's why all the men wear the brown and.
Wow, it just never dawned on her.
I said, what kind of parent take their kids to a prison?
Yeah.
That broke me in half, bro.
Wow,
dude.
Broke me in half, bro. But it's that, so it's like. That trauma again is like, so I got to deal with that. So like it's, and I got to deal with the fact that my mother, her dead grandmother is schizophrenic, and she still go through that. And if you get through the book, you're gonna read about what I go through with that, and that's an everyday thing on my porch out front dealing with that. But I love my mother, but I gotta shield my children from what that might bring.
Wow, dude.
I want to thank you, man, for being so transparent about your situation, which I knew you would. I read in your book and watching you and seeing you out there, but I think that's the thing that brings the value, that you're able to bring your transparency, man. And people you allow people to hear what they won't go see or may not ever, get to see. And I want to appreciate you, man. Give it up,
Thank
man.
you guys.
Tony.
Yeah,
Brother Lewis.
And real quick, I wanted to tell people how to get your book, Slug, and how to follow you and all that.
Slug, A Boy's Life in the Age of Mass Incarceration. You on Amazon, iTunes, Kobo, Nook. If you're in the D.C. area, Politics and Prose bookstores. IG and Twitter, Mr. Tony Lewis Jr.
Yeah, Mr. Tony Lewis.
And MrTonyLewisJr.com too.
That's is it TonyLewisJr.com or
Yeah.
is Mr. Tony
Nah,
Lewis?
it's TonyLewisJr.com.
Okay.
Junior spelled out too.
TonyLewisJr.com. Man, I want to thank everybody who tuned in with us live. Everybody who commented. I know we didn't get a lot of comments, but this was intense for me, man. I was locked into what this guy was saying. Absolutely want to thank for everybody who's supporting us. Listen, these husbands, we appreciate you. Always try to bring you that value. Always try to bring you that good medicine. We do it because you know what? We love that.
Yeah.